Salvation obviously seems to be strongly linked to calling upon God's name. That is what the Bible says. But where do churches stand?
In a Vatican directive on the use of the name of God in the sacred liturgy from 2008, addressed to the Conference of Bishops around the world, it is stated that the tetragrammaton should be replaced with Lord, and that God's name in its diverse forms, including Yahweh and Jehovah, should neither be used nor uttered in the liturgy, prayers, or church hymns.
That is contradictory, since the official Catholic Bible, the Jerusalem Bible, uses the form Yahweh. And some popes, who are known to have the ultimate authority in the Catholic world, use the name too.
The name of God didn't just vanish on its own in the course of time. There have always been forces that have actively pursued the elimination of the name. And yet, these were not solely the enemies of the people of Israel, but even the Jews themselves, who banned the name of their own God, beginning approximately in the 2nd century after Christ.
The rabbis of the 2nd century forbade the utterance as well as the use of the name. It was only to be used in the synagogues and then again replaced with the title Adonai, which means Lord. That is how the name slowly began to disappear, and from the 3rd century onward it more or less stopped being used, except for occasionally in written form, but no longer verbally.
According to what is known, even those Jews who joined the Christian movement observed the ban to not speak the name in public, since violations involved severe punishment by the Jewish Supreme Court, the Sanhedrin. Quite often, the objection is raised that the name of God isn't mentioned in the New Testament, so that Stephen could not have called out Jehovah, but rather Lord, or My God, do not charge this sin against them.
The question concerning the presence of God's name in the New Testament is a matter of great controversy, because one could not find it in the manuscripts.
Then again, the New Testament is full of quotations taken from the Old Testament, in which the name was present in the form of the Tetragrammaton.
When the New Testament writers quoted from the Old Testament, they either quoted from the Hebrew text or from the Greek text of the Septuagint, a translation of the Hebrew text that was started in the 3rd century Common Era.
If they quoted from the Hebrew text, they came across the name and probably used it. But the name had been replaced with Kyrios, Lord, in the Greek Septuagint.
So it was argued that the translators of the Septuagint, they removed the name of God and used Kyrios instead, and the New Testament writers followed suit.
But already in 1944, this assumption was proved wrong, after papyri of the Septuagint were published under the name Fuad 266 in Cairo.
In this fragment of the Septuagint, we find the name of God here, Yod, He, Vav, He, in Aramaic characters. Later, the Dead Sea Scrolls were found, and here also came fragments of the Septuagint with the name. Here we have the name in Old Hebrew characters in the middle of the Greek text.
The scholar Rolf Foruli therefore concludes the following.
So, as a matter of fact, all the fragments of the Septuagint up to year 50 of our Common Era has God's name either in Aramaic script, in Old Hebrew script, or as the Greek phonetic transcription Yao. So the argument that the New Testament writers, they used Kyrios because the Septuagint translators did so, is invalid.
Im Namen des Vaters und des Sohnes und des Heiligen Geistes, der Herr sei mit euch.
Even if the original scripts of the New Testament aren't available nowadays, it can be assumed, after what has been said so far, that with certain probability the name of God was used in it. Based on this assumption, some well-known translators reinserted the name of God in the New Testament, in particular in quotations from the Hebrew Scriptures. Just as Stephen probably called out God's name, it is likely that Jesus also used the name of God, at least around his disciples.
Jesus and his disciples also held God's name in high esteem. For example, when Jesus taught his disciples to pray, he said, "Let your name be sanctified." And in his own prayer to his Father, according to John chapter 17, he says that he had made manifest God's name for his followers, which means that he told them the fame and purpose and everything that God's name included.
So, if the name of God still cannot be found in the New Testament, then this is, on the one hand, as mentioned before, due to the replacement of the Tetragrammaton with Kyrios, Lord, and, on the other hand, due to the prohibition, which was in force at the time.
The Talmud states that anyone who pronounces the name of God will have no share in the world to come.
The name was also not even allowed to be brought before the Jewish Supreme Court, the so-called Sanhedrin. Is that why Jesus used terms such as power in replacement there?
So the high priest said to him, "By the living God, I put you under oath to tell us whether you are the Christ, the Son of God." Jesus said to him, "You yourself said it. Yet I say to you men, from henceforth you will see the Son of Man sitting at the right hand of power and coming on the clouds of heaven." Then the high priest ripped his outer garments, saying, "He has blasphemed. What further need do we have of witnesses?"
And we should take a look at the Ketef Hinnom inscription, close to Jerusalem, from the year 625 before Common Era. This is an inscription of 2 silver plates, and here we see the name of God at least 3 times, here and here and here. Yevarecha Yehovah. Let Jehovah bless you. And here we also have the tetragram. So, no doubt, the name of God was freely used by people living in Israel.
All the more astonishing is the explanation the Vatican provides in order to prohibit the use of God's name.
As an expression of the infinite greatness and majesty of God, it was held to be unpronounceable,
and hence was replaced by the title Lord. Could this be a coincidence? Millions of Christians pray not to Jehovah but to a Lord, whose Akkadian translation is Baäl. Once again, let's see what the Bible says about Baäl.
They are thinking of making my people forget my name, just as their fathers forgot my name by means of Baäl.
And in another passage, it is written that God would bring calamity over Jerusalem because the Jewish priesthood even offered up their children to Baäl.
And they built the high places of the Baäl in order to burn their sons in the fire as whole burnt offerings to the Baäl.
But the Bible gives the observant reader even more information. When Satan deceives Eve in the form of a serpent, he strictly avoids saying God's name.
Bible translators found out that Satan uses the term God, even though the name Jehovah is found in the text. For example, when Jesus has a discussion with Satan, Jesus solely uses Jehovah. But Satan solely uses the title God. He never uses the name, even though he knows it. So the act of using the name of God is strongly bound to our relationship with God. If I love someone, I use that person's name. If I love God, I use his name. And that is something Satan does not want.
Et Satan ne veut pas ça.